Joining me now is one of the most influential voices on military matters inside the Democratic Party, Army veteran and Rhode Island Democratic Senator Jack Reed. Of course, Senator Reed serves on the Armed Services Committee. Senator, good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, Chuck.
So I want to actually get you to respond first to David Petraeus. It's amazing to me how people want to assume where Petraeus is on certain things when it comes to Iraq. Obviously, he was the man behind the successful surge back in 2006, 2007. But he seems to be in a place that many are not even here, which is don't do anything that basically backs this Maliki government in any form. What do you say to that?
I think he's exactly right. David is one of the most thoughtful and experienced people that has actually led forces in Iraq, understands the cost, particularly to the young men he led, and his advice, I think, is extraordinarily sound. What Maliki has done is he's politicized the military and militarized the politics. And unless he begins to reform his own government, reach out to be inclusive, and also create a military that is based on merit, not on loyalty to Maliki, then what we do is probably not going to be dispositive at all. And I think David's viewpoint, and it's not influenced, I think, by partisanship or by anything else.
Clearly.
It's just by his great experience, his great expertise, and his commitment to do what he thinks best for the country, his country.
Yeah, there's so few people that are considered non or bipartisan. I think it's pretty fair to say David Petraeus is certainly one of those few people these days. So, Senator, let me ask you: should the bar be no military assistance, no military help from the United States until Maliki goes?
No, I think what the pressure has to be, and it has to be relentless, and it has to be not just the United States, but the world community. Maliki has to reform and become an effective leader, and if not, then we have to, I think, not we really, but the Iraqi people have to ask themselves, will they continue to tie their fate to this one individual? But I think sometimes Maliki has surprised us. In 2008, he took decisive action against the Shia militia in Basra, even before we were ready to move. He has to understand that not only his country, but his own longevity is threatened, and he has to begin to be more pragmatic, more practical, and more inclusive.
You know, though, every report that I've been hearing about, I know Vice President Biden, who's got the best personal relationship with Maliki, talked to him yesterday, but everything you hear is that he's spouting off conspiracy theories, that he's nowhere near sort of confronting the idea that he's part of the problem.
Well, unfortunately, I'm hearing that too, Chuck, and that seems to be a persistent pattern where he will sort of think first of himself, unfortunately not of his country, and then second, it's a web of intrigue always against him, always against his personality, rather than looking out and seeing what he can do for his nation. But despite that, in this crisis, he has to recognize that change has to take place. He has to get competent leaders that are leading these units, these Iraqi units. He has to go ahead and begin to have a real dialogue with the Sunni community as well as the Kurdish community. And I think, and I hope he can do that, because that is the critical issue of the moment. If he can do that, then we have some traction. If he doesn't do that, then there's very little traction for, his government and our efforts in Iraq.
You know, at one point you used the phrase Iraqi people. And I say this, and I ask this because I wonder, is that really possible? Is this a country that can support a democracy right now, or does it really need to partition itself?
It's a country that has obviously significant lines of demarcation between Kurds, Sunni, and Shia. And then within those communities, tribal animosity. So this gets down into the real sort of detailed nitty-gritty of different competing tribes, different competing sectarian groups. But I think the notion of an Iraq government with its differences is something that does appeal to the vast majority of Iraqis. They understand that they'd be better off in terms of their future if they could hold together. Now, that might mean a reformation of their governance, more of a federation form. Right. One of the realities, too, is there's been this discussion over the years of let's just divide it up into nice, neat, sectarian areas. Some of those areas have a lot of oil. Others don't. So it begs a basic question. How are some of these areas going to support themselves? So I think that's a simplistic approach, but the reality is, and I think, that most Iraqis see the value in trying to hold together, even though they recognize the differences are profound.
You're one of the people that probably has more right to backseat drive on Iraq than anybody. You voted against giving President Bush authorization to conduct this war back in the day. So let me ask you this. Do you think President Obama should go to Congress and get some sort of affirmation for whatever he does? He doesn't probably constitutionally need to. Would you like to see him do that?
Well, I think it clearly depends on what course of action that he chooses. Yeah, as you indicated, there is a significant ramping up of intelligence activities for our benefit as much as for the benefit of the Iraqi security forces. We have in the area moved a carrier battle group. We have surface ships. We have the military power. But until there's a clear sort of plan of action, and until that crosses the threshold where there's a significant involvement, I think the president has sufficient authority to not only conduct intelligence operations, but to particularly take out individual targets, ISIS individuals who pose a threat not just to Iraq, but to the world community and the United States.
And very quickly, do you think we'll ever rescind this authority, this sort of war authority that the president has? President Bush had it, President Obama has it. Do you think we'll rescind it before President Obama leaves office?
I think we'll rescind it eventually, but the problem, I think, is first, you have to replace it with something that allows the president, not just President Obama, but any president, the ability to preempt terrorist groups that are challenging us in an immediate fashion. And then second, honestly, the climate here is less about sort of coming together in a deliberative way, and that was, I think, in the wake of 9/11, that was clearly the case. I mean, we were one Congress, one people. We were going to give, and we did give President Bush the authority to move into Afghanistan and to take appropriate action against Al Qaeda. That climate has changed dramatically.
Yeah, well, you say that, that's for sure. Anyway, Senator Jack Reed, leading Democrat on military affairs, of course, from Rhode Island. Thanks very much. Up next.